This is what we're going to cover today. This is actually not a very long module because we mainly want to just set you up for your work together with your partner. But to continue to collect and analyze your data, develop findings from organizing it, and we are going to talk a little bit about themes and patterns, and then you'll meet with your research partner. All right, so there are different types of data, however you say it. Back in November, we discussed two types of data, quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative data is the type that the value is measured in the form of numbers or counts, with a unique numerical value associated with each data set. Also known as numerical data, quantitative data further describes numeric variables like how many. Qualitative data can be observed and recorded. This type is non-numerical in nature. This type is collected through methods of observation, one-on-one interviews, conducting focus groups, and similar methods. Today, we're focusing on steps 4, 5, and 6, the collecting data. Professional educators always want their instructional decisions to be based on the very best possible data. Action researchers can accomplish this by making sure that the data used to justify their actions are valid, which means the information represents what the researcher says it does, and reliable, meaning the researchers are confident about the accuracy of the data. To ensure reasonable validity and reliability, action researchers should avoid relying on any single source of data. Most teacher researchers use a process called triangulation to enhance the validity and reliability of their findings. Triangulation means using multiple independent sources of data to answer one's questions. Analyzing data, number 5. Although data analysis often brings to mind the use of complex statistical calculations, this is rarely the case for the action researcher. A number of relatively user-friendly procedures can help a practitioner identify the trends and patterns in action research data. During this portion of the 7-step process, researchers methodically sort, sift, rank, and examine their data to ask 2 generic questions. What is the story told by these data, and why did the story play itself out that way? And that'll be good for you to remember as you come into that final month with us and present. What story did the data tell you, and how did it play itself out this way? By answering these 2 questions, the teacher researcher can acquire a better understanding of the phenomenon under investigation, and as a result can end up producing grounded theory regarding what might be done to improve the situation. And then number 6, reporting results. The reporting of action research most often occurs in an informal setting, which will definitely be us, that are far less intimidating than the venues where scholarly research has traditionally been shared. Faculty meetings, brown bag lunch seminars, and teacher conferences are among the most common venues for sharing action research with peers. All right, this is sort of an example that we're sharing with you, and I hope I do it justice, just to kind of help you think. So an example from the field, it was called the flipped classroom. All right, so consider an educator teaching a government class who flipped her classroom as her action for the data collection. And she asked her students to provide some feedback on their learning in a survey. So the research question was this. This will help you with yours. If I flipped my classroom using video to send lessons home and iBook technology, how will this affect the quality of knowledge building dialogues in the classroom? She was interested in what students learned, how they learned, and changes in their attitudes and engagement in learning. Therefore, she might take her 10 survey questions and she may organize them in this way. Under knowledge, she'd have 3. Under process, she might have 4. and under attitude, she could have 2. So here's some things for her to consider. What tests or quizzes did students take that would help answer the first question about knowledge? How might her field notes shed light on what are the students' notes on what students were learning, and what artifacts were produced that could be examined? Now, this is very typical of what teachers do all the time. Next, she would compute responses to these groups of questions, and she would think about other data sources besides the survey. So then she looks at work samples. How did students' comments match her notes? Were there more or fewer problems that students needed help with? And then she might organize the analysis into 3 sections. This is sort of the process. The previous slide was kind of the knowledge, and then the process. There were student responses that addressed their work in discussion circles and what they learned from each other, and then some of the problems from group work. So think about process with that. Okay, and then she's got to organize it. Now I'm gonna give you a second. I'm not reading it, so just I want you to take a minute and I want you to look at all these different headings and then the suggestions underneath. If you think this is something that might help you in the discussion, go ahead and take a picture of this slide for your work with your partner. You can see that now multiple sources of data are being examined to see what they say about the outcomes that the educator cares about. The analysis should be an honest hunt to figure out what can be learned from what happened. You are looking for valid measures that will answer your question. For example, if a teacher listed grades as evidence of student engagement, one might challenge this measure as not a valid measurement of engagement, because a student can have high grades and not be engaged, and another student could be engaged and yet have low grades. And this is why researchers consider the validity of measures. So let's stay with the teacher who flipped her classroom and had students keep notes in their iBooks as they watch the videos at home. This teacher wants to analyze this textual data. How should she approach this? Depending on which category the action researcher chooses, there are lots of ways to do a qualitative analysis of data. Some are more time consuming than others, and a large amount of data might be more than a teacher can examine. Our teacher might want to create a sample to analyze. She could take a random set of 3 entries for each student, or all the students' last blog before the test, or she might decide to examine all the blogs of 6 students. These 6 could be randomly selected from all of the students or from groups of students. For example, the teacher might select 2 students at random from those that received an A, B, or C grade in the course, or in a previous course, or 1 student from each discussion group. So there's lots of choices there. But you don't have to look at everything to look at that qualitative data. All right, theme analysis is similar to content analysis, but a bit more difficult. Here, you are not looking for concepts, but for themes. For example, some process themes might be positive or negative attitudes about the different forms of technology used in the classroom. As you begin analyzing your data, you may begin to notice trends, patterns, and possible themes. Thematic analysis is a method of analyzing qualitative data. It is usually applied to a set of text, like interview transcripts. The researcher closely examines the data to identify common themes, which are topics, ideas, and patterns of meaning that come up repeatedly. So action research is not about proving how successful you were at some new attempt. It's about learning from your efforts. It is not so much about whether it worked or not, but a more thoughtful examination of how it worked or for whom it worked and why things turned out as they did. Think about your story. Be ready to hear that your plans did not work as you expected. Try not to be defensive. Instead, see this as a time to learn from your inquiry, especially during a pandemic. What worked and why? What did not work and why? It is important to examine evidence that contradicts or even opposes your research question. Think about what your data has told you and tells others about what you've learned. You can use charts, graphs, tables, anything you choose, or none at all. It's just up to you. While there are suggested guidelines about these choices, you might find it works just as well to display the data in lots of different ways, and then test it with someone who doesn't know your data and see if it makes sense. The bottom line is just try to find ways to clearly communicate your data in an honest and pleasing way. Valid and reliable data is a critical component of your action research, and when choosing data, it's important to ensure that it is connected to student outcomes. That's the main point right here on this slide. Okay, so here is, I tried to put these in order on your digital handout. You can revisit your action research goal from January by following the link that is on your digital agenda under Module 3. And if you want to change that some, you go ahead. If you've thought about it some more, I kind of feel like you're running out of time to do too much change, but just go ahead and make sure that's the one you want, that goal. Okay, and then in the handout is the action research outline. Discuss the scholarly research you found on your topic, and you can talk about this with your partner. And then you have a goal setting link, and I called that the to-do list, because we know you've got till April, or you really need to be through by the end of March. We have one more meeting where you'll get to work on this. And so you've got quite a few little handouts there to help you. This is, they've taken the outline of the research and they've created a table for you to, you'll see that in the handout. It looks just like this. And you will, as you talk with your partner, you can fill this out. All right, now I am going to unshare and see if you have any questions about the process, because now we're going to, before, I want to see if you have any questions, but Jennifer's going to share with us about the rest of the day, and we will not be coming back together except for office hours. So do you have any questions about action research?
Okay, well, I'm just going to jump in, and if you look at your digital agenda, at the very bottom, Module 3, it is the MTSS link again to that PowerPoint, and we just want you to have some more time to look at that and to think through it. We even think in your action research group, when you're talking, you could go slide right into that to talk to someone about it instead of being by yourself, or maybe during your book club time. And we know that some of you have scheduled book club time for a different day, and that's fine. But we will be here from 12:45 to 1:45 for any questions you have for our office hours. And at the very, very bottom, there is the survey link. And be sure, don't fill it out yet, because you want to be able to respond to the Module 2 and the Module 3 discussions that you have before you complete that. But we're trying to give you a lot of time to go off and really dig in and get to your work. So unless you have questions, we won't see you again until March. But if you do have questions, we will be here from 12:45 to 1:45. So if y'all are ready to go, we love you. Stay safe out there.